Welcome back to the latest episode of the Key and Mang audio experience. I'm your host, Mang, as always, joined by my fellow co-host, Key. Key, what's good?
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm good, can't complain. We got another special one. We got Dr. Josh Funk, the owner of R2P. They just won the WebPT Innovator Award, so they're coming in hot right now. But Josh, how you feeling?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to the conversation today.
Of course. Can you kind of open it up with kind of how you got to this point, how you got into PT?
Yeah, I got injured like a lot of different people. Just my experience was in a Division I athletics environment, played lacrosse at Ohio State, and felt just honestly blessed to have had my first serious injury in an environment like that, where we had all the resources, the staff that had all of the knowledge that I needed to honestly avoid surgery for something that sometimes people do need surgery for, which was a torn labrum and rotator cuff. And then it took me coming home for summer break, still needing to kind of continue that process and recognizing how sharp of a drop off there was between the more niche focused environment that I had, become used to at school, and what was available to the masses. And I think that kind of put me in a situation where I was always thinking about how to potentially bring something like a Division I athletics environment to the masses. And here lies Rehab to Perform. After being founded in December of 2014, we just opened our 7th office, and we'll have our 8th one open in Virginia by the end of the summer.
So with R2P being on their 8th clinic, can you tell like how your first one started and how that has like shaped the clinics going forward?
Absolutely. For me, I graduated first, and I kind of had an idea that I was going to go in this direction, but I worked for 2 other people who were successful private practice owners. One that was in Montgomery County, one that was in Frederick County, and I was able to learn under their kind of like tutelage, mentorship, under the framework of the company that they had that was successful, before finally making my jump. The shift into private practice was not one that was easy by any means. I think my story that I'll share here is not unique in that I did not have any formal business experience. I never took a business class. I never found myself outside of a day of business coursework in PT school, really being exposed to much more than the clinical side. So I had a pretty significant shock when I finally cut the cord. But fortunately, I had also kind of spun off and had a side hustle, like I know many people out there are jumping into a little bit more, that was in lacrosse services. So the first company that I had actually started while I was in college, and I was doing camps, clinics, lessons. I'd gotten to a point where I had 90 kids at a summer camp while I was going through grad school, which was obviously amazing, and its own kind of bear in itself. But that spun off into a more formal, bigger picture company where we eventually had 280 kids in the program from a club team standpoint. So learning on the fly was something that I was doing while being exposed in that more formal work environment, and then cutting the cord and jumping into R2P's kind of first concept, so to speak, was me being in the middle of 2 turf fields up at Frederick Indoor Sports Center. I had developed a relationship with the owner there over the years because we had ran camps, clinics, we had done things from a league standpoint, from a lacrosse from a lacrosse world, and he had informed me that the group that was occupying that space was leaving that space. So it was a nice little 1,200 square foot spot. It was about, I think, $2,100 a month. And it put ourselves in a situation where we could also use the gym equipment right outside of the door. So it was nice from an overhead standpoint, very, very low barrier to entry, and pretty much just had to cover the cost of that, that 2,100. Myself and Zach Baker, who went to PT school with me, obviously having to cover his salary. So that was that was R2P in the humble years, in a nice little sublet space, and allowed us to definitely take some lumps and make a lot of mistakes to eventually get us to a point where, we had our first brick and mortar in July of 2016.
What did you need to see to cause the transition from that 1,200 square foot space to the first physical location? Like, what did you need to see check off to be like, all right, we're going?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing, honestly, I'll be transparent here. There's probably three different things. One, we actually got asked to leave. So that was a factor that had occurred. What led to that was that, quite honestly, we were doing pretty well, and we were having an increase in what we were seeing from a volume standpoint. There was a personal training business that we were sharing space with that was also owned by the owner of the facility. And there started to be friction around various things where you have shared space sometimes and people aren't aligning on culture. And then when you start to get pressure to provide referrals in a way that's not authentic and seems a little bit forced to the individuals that are in another business, including the people that I was, working with, we started to get a little bit more and more uncomfortable. It felt a little bit of, hey, you're doing well. Why aren't you sharing your success with us? Well, sometimes, to be quite honest, other fitness entities in the area were referring us people. So why would we, kind of break our trust with these people who had entrusted us to be what we said, where we're a fitness friendly entity that'll make sure that your people keep working out and that your clients remain your clients. Like, why would I take them from you, pass them to somebody just because they share space with us? Like, that's not good business. It's not a good way to do things. And then, to be quite honest, like, just because you share space with us doesn't mean we like everything and anything that you do and that you're automatically a great referral source for every person that walks in. So maybe there's some things that we need to continue to have conversations around that allow you to become a better and better referral source. And then the third piece, to be honest, I mean, our little 1,200 square foot spot, when we had, 3 clinicians in there, I mean, we were packed. Like, we were on top of each other. The waiting room was on top of 3 tables. It just got to a point where I think we were unable to really portray the company in a manner in which we really wanted to. So, those three factors put us in a situation where we're looking for a new home, and we found a 5,000 square foot home that, to be quite honest, I mean, we've been there for coming up on 6 years, and we'll actually be adding 4,000 square feet. So it'll be a 9,000 square foot facility here. The goal is to probably have 12 PTs by the end of the year. And that'll be our Mecca facility. It'll be, in my opinion, one of the nicer sports rehab, fitness focused PT, options around.
How did you have that conversation with the person you were sharing this space with? I feel like that's a hard conversation to have.
It was tough. It was definitely heated, if I'm being quite honest. And when you get asked to leave, there's definitely some, there's some less than ideal circumstances. Because, we had a timeline of when we had to be out. And I don't know how familiar people listening are with commercial real estate, but stuff doesn't move that quickly when you're involving landlords and lawyers and contractors. So, we had a very, very short window, and I had a very, very short time period to, quite honestly, learn. I jumped into a SCORE full day, kind of lease focused workshop to learn a little bit more about that process. For anybody that's never checked out SCORE, I highly recommend it. They have free mentors on there. And a ton of different courses as it relates to business that are low cost or free, as well as, bigger events and conferences to network with people. But, that period was frantic. It was frantic because you're trying to maintain your business. You're trying to continue to grow the business, but you're also trying to, figure out what you need from an equipment standpoint, a contractor standpoint, to changing addresses, which sounds super simple, but sometimes with insurances, it's not always the most simple. And we honestly opened that new facility with only 2/3 of the flooring down. We were treating patients with a third of the floor still concrete. You know, you're in on the weekends. I honestly slept in that facility one night on the couch up front because you're still doing stuff in the evening and before work, trying to get it to where it needs to be in a presentable fashion as quickly as possible. But it's been tremendous for us. We're busier than I ever could have imagined at that facility. And, you know, like I mentioned, we're going through the process now where we're, adding about 80% to the current existing footprint. We have 8 clinicians there now. And I mean, on Tuesdays when all of them are there, it is, it is jam packed. It's fun. So just a little bit more space confined than we would like at this point in time. So we're excited to be able to push into another space in the building.
It's going up on a Tuesday. Going up.
Yes. No, it's fun, man. You know, we're changing up the turf too. I don't know if you saw the red turf at our new facility. That'll be the move going forward. So the team's excited about getting rid of the old green turf that's been there for about 6 years now. They're excited to order new equipment. You hate to say, but like the first location probably got more of like the budget decisions. And you know, they complain a new office opens up and they're like, oh, must be nice. Oh, must be nice. Wonder when we can have that, or wonder when we can, have this piece of equipment or that piece of equipment, or, this small little detail here. So it's just nice that we're going to be able to kind of start fresh and honestly just put them in a situation where hopefully they feel like because they have so much space that they have everything that they need.
Was it harder to open the first location, or harder to open multiple locations?
It was harder to open the second one, to be honest. The second one was the hardest one. I think because the first one had such a low barrier to entry with regards to overhead costs and you're sharing space, I think that definitely made stuff easier. It's not to say that I didn't have to skip myself on payroll some during the first, say, 18 months of us being up and running. But the second office, because the first had moved into its own brick and mortar and you had this 5,000 square foot footprint, you were expecting to jump right into the same level of success in a new area, not really taking into account all of the steps that it took to get you to that point. The second office opened October 2017, which was almost 3 years later. And we just didn't do a tremendous job at probably sequentially tracking all of the different things that we had done to be successful, to go through the startup space, to earn the ability to go into a, facility that was one that we could call our own. And then almost have the second expectation be exactly where that first one was at that given time. So I screwed up insurance contracting. We definitely didn't have a fully developed marketing plan at that point in time. The first 6 months were really, really, really rough. Fortunately, I was able to get some amazing people. The person that was in the photo with me yesterday, Jen, started out part-time, and now she's pretty much, C-suite with the company with her knowledge of everything from an administrative operations standpoint. I was able to convince my college roommate with a marketing background to join us probably about 6 or 7 months after that second office opened. So you've just been able to attract really, really good people that are incredible at what they do. And I'd say those two people in itself really helped us kind of turn the tide, fix some of the problems that we were having, and get us to a point where, opening 3, 4, they are getting easier, if I'm being quite honest. So as opposed to more difficult, because to a certain extent, I can pull up a document, our rollout document, and follow a playbook that needs probably maybe only like 5 to 10% tweaking every single time. And every single time we do it, we learn. So it puts us in a situation where the process just gets more and more streamlined. And I don't want to say it's fully automated, but you can almost kind of press play on it. And as long as we're following certain timelines, we feel pretty comfortable about making those bigger decisions.
So for that playbook, when the pandemic hit, everything was kind of down, and all of a sudden you just see 5, 6, 7 coming out. I was like, how are they opening clinics and no one's working right now? Everyone's down in the pandemic. So I was really curious how that process went.
When everybody's running in a direction, run the opposite way. I've oftentimes been a big believer of that. Take, for example, marketing. A lot of people spent less during the pandemic. We spent more. We knew that as a result of spending more where people were spending less, if you're familiar with like a competitive space, I almost have to pay more for customers. But then when the space gets less competitive, because there's less digital advertising, there's less mailers, there's less things hitting people's potential emails or the retargeting ads that are following you around as you navigate websites. If there's less people to compete with, your dollar actually goes further. So by spending more, we actually ended up spending less in terms of the actual conversions of people during that time period. And it put us in a situation where we're able to continue to grow. Outside of Q2 in 2020, we've had relatively steady growth. We maintained 3 profitable offices through 2020. The only one that wasn't was Bethesda, that opened up 2.5 months before the pandemic hit. So, and for anybody that's not familiar with Bethesda, it's a pretty pricey area. So, that wasn't necessarily ideal. But other than that, we've been able to, maintain our team. We did have a brief period of time where we had to furlough people just to honestly play it safe a little bit. We had to put 401k on hold, and you're doing certain things to just kind of be cautious, knowing that you want to have a company that is still around. But what do we spin off into? We spun off into workshops. We've spun off into more things that we were doing online. We were connecting more, I think, through various forms that were not in person, because, if anybody's familiar with us, we're a big in-person business. We love going to events. We love collaborating on workshops. We love meet and greets. We love networking. So we ended up just, I think, always doing what we could to control what we could control. And I think a lot of people used it as a period of time where they paused. Instead, we just kind of reframed or kind of redirected our efforts and put ourselves in a situation where we were able to go after market share when maybe other people kind of put the brakes on themselves. So just feel fortunate, honestly, to have people who are agile, who want to keep moving forward, who weren't looking at it as necessarily a lull, and wanted to just continue to work towards kind of this greater the greater good of the company, and continue to push towards some of the goals, dreams, and things that we've been working to pre-pandemic.
I think all that work that you did with reframing and during the pandemic, that stuff still can go when the pandemic is over. Like now you have all this online stuff that has like lifetime value. So you kind of put yourself like 10 steps ahead of the game, although you're already there, but like
we built a better business. No, I agree. And we looked at operations. We looked at stuff that people don't see, like the things behind the scenes that people maybe feel but don't see from an operational standpoint. Like, we created efficiencies in the business that allow us now to move forward and have a more streamlined way of doing things, and it'd have to go down a bunch of different things that people probably don't want to really necessarily hear about. But, if there's a certain way to skip steps and put you in a position where the end result is more repeatable, like that's a win, especially when you talk about things at the front desk. You talk about things from a marketing standpoint, if you're talking about patient experience. So, talk about something like, we created email drip campaigns that follow people throughout the course of their patient journey with us. Like, that was something that I think is, I know for sure is innovative. It'll continue to grow, but it's a way to make yourself more productive during a time where people aren't coming in. I think some people may have viewed it, oh, well, people aren't coming in, I'm just kind of hanging out. Well, we were just sitting here kind of going, all right, well, what can we actually do? So we were just thinking about that lull in society, I think, a lot differently than other people. And now that things are relatively, at least I think, back to normal, we're able to really accelerate what it is that we're doing because of all of these efficiencies that we did work on through that time period.
What can you talk about, like what checkpoints or like what criteria you have to hit to know like, hey, it's time to open another clinic? Because like you've been opening them like pretty fast. Like what is your like cue to be like, I need another clinic?
I think honestly, a lot of it's right now is just looking at opportunities that are present in terms of higher traffic, higher population dense areas. We know that we're probably not going to be that unique for that long. As I was at a conference and talking to a bigger, more physician-focused physical therapy entity that's in the DMV, and I think that you're going to start to see more turf space, gym-looking environments where the medicine world, I think, is realizing that some of the traditional healthcare vibes need to drastically shift. So I almost view kind of this window of time as being an important one, not to say that we're going to rush and make decisions that aren't intelligent, but we realize there's probably a limited window. And as long as I have leadership in place that's able to go into these locations and maintain the culture, the environment, and uphold the same level of clinical excellence that we've been able to have at the other places, we're going to continue to make moves. So I think that's probably going to lead to at least, we'll kind of keep going on this, like maybe 4 location a year type of tempo here for a little while. We'll see if we do maybe a little bit more, but the leadership piece is key. For anybody that's been following us, we do have internal promotion as a very, very center point of our, team development. Whether or not it's Jin, who I mentioned, who went from a part-time front desk position to full-time front desk to behind the scenes of 2 clinics to now behind the scenes at almost 8 clinics. And then you talk about from a PT standpoint, where we have our PTs that started out as, quote unquote staff PTs that are now, incentivized at offices in leadership positions where they're the site directors. So the more that we have people come in with goals, with dreams, ambitions of leadership, it makes that conversation so much easier, because we can almost have people come in and you start to put them in certain tracks where they're going to come in. They're going to obviously learn the clinical side. Then we put them in a situation where they can lead and they can integrate with the community and do all of the things that we've come to expect at the other offices. But, moving forward, like we wouldn't be going into Northern Virginia into Tyson's Corner without Tim coming in 2 years ago. He was a former DPT student and saying, hey, I'm going to leave this place to come in here and do X, Y, and Z. This is what I want to do. So, the more we have, these young professionals that come in, they're transparent, they're very, very intentional about what it is that they're looking for out of their career. It allows us to make some of these bold decisions that we've been making with a little bit more confidence.
And what I think is cool too, we've been following along with some of the stuff that you guys have been doing, like the intern house and having the clinical students all in the same place, and you kind of engulf them in your culture, and then you give them a great experience, and they're like, I want to work at R2P. So then you just have this magnet of students coming in, and as you get more locations, you'd be like, all right, I know you fit in this culture. I know you know how the things work, and we can continue to build that way.
100%. We had 58 students last year. We will have, I think, right around 80 this year. Jamie does such a good job of the organization and running that program. We have a ton of PTs that I think overall would probably view themselves as teachers. They love being a CI, but Absolutely. Like moving forward, when people leave their time with us, we have a really, really good idea of are they interested in potentially working with us? And B, whether or not the staff at a given location feel like that person would be a great fit. So obviously it's got to be a two-way street, but it does put us in a position where, I was at WebPT Ascend and people were talking about how challenging it was to hire clinicians. And I don't feel that way. We have a roster. We have people like literally waiting for opportunities with us. And I think that's largely a result of the internship program, and having people have an amazing experience where, hey, maybe they don't join us right out of school, but maybe they're joining us a year or two down the road, but we're able to put ourselves in a position where we can forecast and have conversations with people. Hey, we know we're going to have this opportunity pop up. Are you interested? And almost kind of secure spots long in advance instead of hiring out of need. Like I'd rather be proactive, forecast for the future, have the conversation, know that we're going to walk in and automatically, like when we open an office, or if we grow to a certain point, that we already have that person, quote unquote, almost like waiting for us. Obviously it's a mutual waiting period, but it does allow us to move forward knowing that we're not going to potentially run into the same problems from a staffing standpoint that is affecting many of the other companies right now. And yeah, the intern house is pretty cool. I think we need to do a little bit more there from a media standpoint, just to showcase some of the stuff. But I did just get a small GoPro camera that I think is going to come in handy there.
Yeah, it's a dope idea. It's a dope concept, and I think it's super cool to have all your students in one spot.
Reality TV, man. R2P intern house. Why not?
You've been talking a lot about culture and the environment. Can you kind of take us through the culture you tried to build at R2P?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, the roots of the company are in an athletic training room. So for anybody that's familiar with, the athletic training room, it's not quiet. It's pretty social. It's something that people don't necessarily hate going to. I can think of college. You have athletes from all different sports in there. Everybody's kind of pushing each other. There's friendly conversation, there's friendly competition, but overall it's one that's engaging, and it kind of made the process a little bit easier, made it easier to be injured, so to speak, because of how engaging it was and how it still felt a little bit more like you were being challenged and pushed and cared for, versus then coming home and having an experience with healthcare where, I'm trying to remember who was talking about it at WebPT Ascend, but like, imagine going to the doctor's office and having like the glass door shut and having somebody just push papers out, and you're sitting in like a sterile waiting room with like bones and tissues on the wall, or like old flower photos. Like it's just automatically something where you're just not tied in. You're not feeling connected to it. So if I then tie that to other environments, I think people generally enjoy where there's a lot of connection and engagement. I think of Cheers, right? Your local neighborhood bar where people pop in. There's a certain social aspect, a connection aspect. There's a lot of people talking and mingling amongst each other. And then a barbershop. And I think in all those places, we can agree, you go in there, there's a warm feeling to it. You feel good about your time there. You're not necessarily looking at the clock, waiting for for yourself to leave. So the environment is such a huge piece. It's the handshake and a smile. It's what's on the walls. It's the music. It's how things look. It's how clean the facility is. There's all of this the different aspects of intentionality with regards to creating an environment that I think fits for the individual, that really is going to an environment of self-improvement, of self-actualization. Like what should healthcare be? It should be like the higher rungs of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So you should walk in there and feel like you're like, man, I'm coming in here and I'm gonna become the best version of myself during my time period here. So, for us, we have a lot of positive affirmations on the wall. We have a lot of quotes. You talk about the music side of things. We have everything from Drake and Post Malone to Kygo to Lizzo to like whatever, it's stuff that's upbeat that probably is going to make you feel like you're more in an Orange Theory or F45 class than you are like with, the piano or elevator music that you're traditionally used to in a healthcare environment. And then, when people are stepping on turf or, they're looking at other people kind of sweat, push themselves. I think that's a huge piece of it. And then if I get, directly to your question, from a culture standpoint, I think a lot of that just starts with values, and the rest of it's kind of your operating principles. So we have our core values on the wall of every single office. The team sees them every day. The patients can see them. I think the transparency there is kind of like your underlying, philosophical ground, or your philosophical foundation for people to kind of have those reminders and kind of think about those as they go about their interactions and how they conduct themselves on a regular basis. So whether or not it's empowerment, whether or not it's education, whether or not it's, respecting, your role from a clinician standpoint, your role in the community, your interactions, and then controlling the controllables, attitude, effort, and enthusiasm are our big three. So, when you can align on the cultural side, the baseline values, and then have operating principles like we're always on offense, feedback is a gift, solutions first. We start to all kind of work in the same direction of more of just a high functioning team, which is what we want to be. It's a culture of high functioning team. And then it's up to the company to layer on the clinical side and develop people as clinicians. But if we can at least function as a high functioning team does, regardless of where that team may be operating off of. I mean, we could be talking about a sports team, another company, a nonprofit. You could be talking about high functioning things from a military standpoint. But the clinical and skill side is then up to the company to continue to hone. But when we go through a hiring process, it's always culture fit first. And hey, how far are they from a clinical side? Because I'd much rather have people that could kind of walk in and understand all of the things that we agree, or have come to think are very, very important from a culture standpoint, and not the opposite, where we're just going after maybe the 4.0 high level clinician that can't operate with others on this high functioning team that we've created. There's a lot of different directions I could go with that. I don't know if that was kind of what you were looking for, but yeah.
No, it was great. It was great. I was just kind of curious. I know the company's growing so fast and it's growing so big that you need the right team members around in each location to represent the culture and the environment. So I was just kind of trying to get a feel for how do you make your decisions when it comes to adding people onto your teams.
Biggest thing is relationships. And I think that what we've been able to do outside of the student internship program is also attract higher level people and higher level clinicians, both as a result of the continuing education platforms that we put together. So, whether or not it's Andrew, who will start up in Bethesda this week, or more recently, Dr. Drew, who started with us in Annapolis, both of those touch points were more through our online or our in-person education platforms. So you start to develop relationships as a result of something that we did spin off into during the pandemic. And the relationship starts with one person on the team, and then the relationship then gets kind of pushed and passed and introduced to people in other parts of the team. And we do not hire people based off only my touch points with them or my relationship with them. When we bring people into the organization, it is a team hire. So if somebody's going to be working at a particular office, ideally everybody will have developed a relationship with that person prior to them even joining us. I'll take, for example, Andrew in Bethesda. Every single person at that office reached out, connected with them on the phone, had a conversation, in addition to some of the more informal and formal touch points that were had by people such as myself. So you start to make more of these group hires, group relationship dynamics a priority prior to somebody joining. And it allows everybody, I think, to move forward with a little bit more certainty. Imagine if I was the only person hiring people and only person developing a relationship, and then I'm telling people at offices who have to lock arms with somebody 40 hours a week, hey, this is your new teammate. Like that's just not going to work out very well. And I think that largely as well, we have people at the offices who recognize they have a lot of autonomy. They do have actual control over decisions at the respective offices. And it's not just the site director. And they care about the people that they are working with. So sometimes they're developing relationships and then they're coming to me saying, hey, I think this person would be a great fit. So you talk about creating an environment where people are definitely engaged and connected because they care enough that they're almost becoming a part of that, that team recruiting process, recruiting people that they know are fits that would come in so that honestly, I don't have to do it for every single office. And they also understand that it probably doesn't make sense for me to be the only person that's kind of initiating those processes for us.
I like that. I think other companies should start to think that way just to really enhance the environment, because if you're at the top, you're not really treating, and then you're expecting all these people to get along. It doesn't really work like that. So I think more input should be taken from employees in the hiring process.
That would be the best case scenario. The only thing that I will do is I'm the person that does get the resumes. And when I get good resumes, I am reaching out and I'm having initial conversations. But after that, it's, hey, I had a great initial conversation. Here's so-and-so's resume. The ball's in your court. Please let me know when we need to involve Nicole, who's HR, for company handbooks, benefits, and potentially a reference check. So I'm kind of that early net only if they are submitting a resume and a cover letter. But a ton of times we either have people that have gone through the student internship program, and you have people at an office saying, hey, we need to keep this person. If I can think of two people more recently, one is just started last Friday at our Mount Airy office, Matt Giroux. He's been a patient. He was a college student intern. He was a DPT intern. He was somebody that the team was like, hey, we have to keep so-and-so. We have to keep. And I was like, all right, sounds good. You just let me know what I need to do. And then we had Mason, who started up at Columbia, where his internship was in Germantown. And people were like, hey, you gotta keep on this person. And then actually the same thing happened, and I can't forget Akani in Gambrills, where Akani was in Bethesda as an intern, and now he's a PT with us in the Gambrills office. So the team does have a certain amount of, I bring up, autonomy, and they act like owners in their own respects with regards to caring a ton about the kind of people that they're going to share space with, knowing that the people that they share space with are a reflection of themselves and the whole company as a whole.
When you talk about, I was looking at, we've been looking at some of your tweets about like leadership and like how you have to take care of your people first, and then they will take care of the patients. Can you kind of talk about how that philosophy has kind of changed in terms of how you think about leadership?
Yeah, I know, and not everybody agrees with it. And I even had some conversations while I was at WebPT Ascend. I'm not a customer's always right person. I'm not. I probably used to be, and I should say I definitely was. I'm more likely at this point in time, just with how much we've chewed on things and chewed on things and chewed on things, to be comfortable saying, or at least walking into a situation, I'm expecting in this situation, the customer is just not a great fit for us. And I only say that because I think we've reached a certain amount of company maturity where we have tried things, we have adapted, we've shifted, we've changed, we've upgraded, we've improved, and we have gotten to a lot more of a certain spot where our team is operating at a very, very high level. They have a high level of process to support them. And I do get so few customer service complaints at this point in time that sometimes I do sit here and just kind of go, I hate to say it, but this person's complaint really is it's not valid. Like, we have all of these other people who aren't viewing this as a source of friction across 7 different offices now. One person out of a full 365-day year is going to be complaining about something. It becomes a lot harder for me to actually validate it. Then if I go back to what I'm just a big believer of now is that, your people drive the success. You're not creating a company to serve the people. You're creating a company that ideally serves your team first. If you're not serving your team first with regards to their goals, dreams, and ambitions, this is a free agency market. I do not think the sporting world is that much different than the corporate world. People are free agents. They are looking for the next best, and they are continuously shifting and changing where it is that they may be based on how engaged, connected, and well supported that they feel. So if I talk about my role shift over the years, I am a big believer of servant leadership, and my job as the CEO, and I can finally say that, especially over the past 3 years that I've earned that title, but your job as CEO is success of the company, which starts with success of your people. So if you're not having regular conversations with your people, getting ahead of the direction that they want their career to go in, providing them with career pathways underneath the umbrella of your company, and overall just treating them with respect and not just making the relationship with the company entirely transactional. Some of these companies out here that are having tons of attrition, like I can't help but sit here and go, well, I get it. You're viewing this person as just another body, and it's transactional, and you're focused solely on just serving your customers and not serving the people. And somebody over the weekend said something that I don't think just really jived with me, but they were like, well, you signed up for employment here. Like, this is what you need to do. This was in the roles and responsibilities. And I maybe agree with certain points of time of that. Obviously there's an agreement into expectations for somebody early on, but they're not just there just to work. Like they're there to be a human. They're there to have multiple aspects of their life taken care of. They're there to have multiple aspects of their life be appreciated. And I think the more that we can get into kind of the holistic wellness and the holistic development of humans while they're with companies, you talk about, in my opinion, creating a much more modern approach to the employer-employee relationship, and one that I think leads largely to people actually having careers for an extended period of time. That I think we're going through this great resignation. Part of me wonders if this is just the great awakening or great awareness for some of these companies to either quickly shift business practices or continue to decline in terms of where their standing is that it was pre-pandemic. And we want to make sure that we're just shifting and adapting business practices. We want to be at the front of healthcare innovation with regards to the workplace. And I think the huge focus on employees, on their growth, changing things around. I mean, if I get into like the approach to reviews, like top-down reviews are the worst. I don't know if either one of you have had it, but like, who wants to get to an end-of-year review where you have a supervisor just talk to you for 30 minutes? I have had a conversation with our leadership, and if they talk more than the people that they're meeting with during that time period, like that, it's wrong. Like that should be a question asking period. It should be a review of the year. It should be a, what more can the company do to serve you? What can we do to facilitate your growth more? What can we do more to be ahead of your goals, dreams, and ambitions? And then, hey, is there any feedback you have for some of your peers that we can also initiate to make sure that this team continues to shift in the same direction, instead of somebody just plopping numbers in front of you and going, hey, how much more can I get out of you? And why are you not doing X, Y, and Z? I think you start to just reshift again, kind of what the whole role is of leadership and what a company should be doing for people. And man, I tell you what, I can go down so many, I could have a long conversation about this, but
I like that though. How did you, like, were you always thinking like this, or did you ever have a different view of leadership and how things should run?
I want to be a player's coach. I think everybody's heard of that, right? I want to walk in and I want people to like be able to come up to me and be like, hey, I think X, Y, and Z, or, and you know, whatever it is that they want to come to me with. And I want them to automatically feel like they're on level ground, that we're always on the same team, working together. I don't want there to be any apprehension. I don't want there to be like this intimidation factor, like, ooh, the boss is walking into the office. Like, no, like I'm just one of you. I just have a different role. And I want us to be able to kind of get along, work on things together, synergize, and put myself in a position where, you know, largely it's not the old days of the corporate world. It's not the old days of the sporting world where you have like this, you know, fear-backed leadership. I'm trying to think of the right word for it, but you know, I think we all have probably been in environments where you don't necessarily enjoy it. There's not a lot of open conversation. Feedback only goes one way and not two ways. And you put yourself in a situation where you're probably, you know, viewing more of like this hierarchical structure to a company instead of what I'd have. It's more of like this circular org chart, or an analogy I've used more recently, different times or for different people to drive the bus. And sometimes I actually need to take a seat. Maybe I'm offering up some suggestions from my different seat on the bus when I'm not driving. But at the end of the day, I don't need to be always the person at the front of the bus yelling at everybody else on the back seats of me. So I think that's largely probably just come from sporting influence and different relationships I've had from a sports standpoint. Having situations where I've realized that the effectiveness of certain coaches has been different depending on their approach. And I think also recognizing I'm a millennial, we have 80, 85, 90% of our team is also a millennial. And I heard a lot of people, you know, over the years, maybe not speak tremendously positively about millennials, but guess what? We have that makeup of our team. We're doing a lot of really, really good things. I think there's a certain way to tap into the millennial. And I think that largely we're doing a lot of those things, and we'll continue to get into more of those as the company continues to evolve. So I think for people out there that are at least open to shifting how they do things, and instead of complaining about the young workforce, figuring out where they're at, figuring out what works for them, that hopefully some of these things resonate with them and they're able to adapt them into their workplace.
Absolutely. And as someone who you kind of built R2P, you've been running it by yourself for, in the early days, at least by yourself for a little bit, along with Zach, and now being able to take a step back. Was it hard to relinquish some of the autonomy, the control, and allow other people to spread their wings and be the driver of the bus?
Man, I don't know what it is, but I really haven't struggled with that the way that some people have struggled with that. I don't quite know why. I think sometimes just recognizing that other people do have tremendous strengths. I mean, I'm sitting there with Jen and we're having conversations with people at the WebPT conference, and there's moments where I'm like, God, thank God she is on our team, because she knows way more about this stuff than I do. And I'd literally be lost in this conversation. So I think the more that you just recognize, A, where your weaknesses are, and B, fill your weaknesses with people that have tremendous strength where you have weaknesses, it really becomes a lot easier for me to kind of pass the wheel off to people at certain points in time. You know, I think very, very well with regards to problem solving solutions and admitting when something's not working well. If I had to pick one area of strength for me, and that's where I can potentially come in and view things differently and help kind of get us thinking about a problem a little bit differently. But then that's where you bring in some of your other amazing people who are the executioners, they are the tacticians. And maybe I kind of kickstarted something or was the catalyst to it, but don't have the enterprise knowledge to actually take it to completion. So that's where, you know, we have added tremendous people, whether or not it's clinicians or people behind the scenes, Matt, Jen, Yuri. We just recently added a COO from another big medical practice nearby, Corey. So you're looking always for areas for opportunity. And a good CEO should continue to know where, and it reminds me a little bit of Karen Litzy's presentation at WebPTSN. Like, you have to have self-awareness. If you don't have self-awareness, you're not able to fill your own gaps. You're not able to see areas for opportunity. And fortunately, that's just been something that over the years, I have been able to do well.
Can you tell us more about your personal development journey and like how that has played a role in your self-awareness?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm trying to think of, yeah, it's like, how far back do you want to go? I think we'll probably keep it
As far back
yeah.
as you want.
No, I
Because you
think
tweet about it a lot.
Yeah, I think we'll probably just keep it R2P. And I think that Hardship has a way of either teaching you or making you stuck, you know, without getting just too into the weeds with people that maybe end up stuck. And I think that whether or not it's been early on where R2P, like, you know, I gave somebody money for credentialing and $5,000 disappeared, or I, you know, skipped myself on payroll for 3 straight times, or with Germantown, I messed up the insurance contracting for the second office and we didn't get paid there for 3 months. And unfortunately, I had to let somebody go within about the first month of being there because I didn't know when we were actually going to get money back. So where does that take me? It takes me to a point where I think that I've always been a big self-belief person. I've always kind of, almost to a fault, thought that I could always solve problems. But I think largely it's forced me into being resourceful. It's forced me into learning. It's forced me into finding mentorship. It's forced me into finding programs. And that, you know, something I saw the other day, it's like, what was the single biggest predictor of success for high achievers? It's the mindset piece. And I think that the self-belief is such a big part of mindset. And being able to put myself in a position where with that failure, I continue to have that growth mindset, continue to look internally and not externally, and continue to find ways to better myself. When I was met with hardship, it was never a thought where I would be like, all right, well, maybe this is not going to work, or maybe I'm not cut out for this, or, hey, maybe, you know, this was just a one-time thing and I need to keep trying it my way. You know, it's never been my way. It's always been groupthink. It's always been, how can I better myself? And I think that's put me in a position where, you know, fortunately, like opening up the first office with me jumping into a lease negotiation or lease management for a full day's class. Like, I don't know how many people have done that, but I guarantee it's probably very, very few. You know, I guarantee that probably very few people have put themselves into small business development center courses, CEO accelerators, leadership accelerators. Like, when you're met with times of or moments of hardship, like, how are you reframing that? And what are you doing to drastically make sure that you don't put yourself into that situation again? And that does, you know, make me think of the word ownership too. It's like in these particular situations, how much ownership are you taking over it? Or are you just kind of casually approaching hardship, or are you attacking it to make sure that it never happens again? Like, it's not the wins that drive you sometimes, it's the loss. It's the moments where you think that you're doing well and then you have the rug pulled out from under you, or the moments where you think you're doing well and something blindsides you. Like, I don't like getting blindsided. I don't like getting surprised. I like having things relatively out in front of me where I see and I'm forecasting, much like our hiring thing, right? I'd rather forecast for future problems. And I think that, you know, the self-awareness piece does come down to, you know, when the rubber hits the road and you have moments of friction, what are you doing to look internally to figure out how you can do stuff differently, or how that you were the central driving factor in why that happened, and how can you make sure that that never happens again? A lot of cliche stuff there, I know, but at the same time, I think I'm a big believer that the big overarching principles of successful people are relatively the same. The micro, the nuance, the situational, the circumstance stuff is different. But if you look at some of the parallels, they are overwhelmingly similar.
What's the consistency of building good habits?
Yes. Yes. And don't try to reinvent the wheel. Like, what are other successful people doing? What are they saying works? Don't try to act like you're an outlier. The less people focus on themselves as being like this tremendous outlier, the better off that they are. Like, I always try to remind myself, you're not that special. Okay. You can't do stuff like completely different than everybody else. And there is somewhat of a path to success. So if these people have done X, Y, and Z to be successful, then you need to follow. If journaling works, make time for journaling. If sitting there and doing a SWOT analysis works, make time to do a SWOT analysis. If you failed here because you didn't have knowledge of X, Y, and Z, go and learn. The moments of hardship it should not be that overwhelmingly challenging to figure out why you were a central driving reason of why that failure occurred.
Well, perfect. Well said.
I definitely agree. And I think developing self-awareness over time comes from like reflecting. I feel like we don't do enough reflecting in our day-to-day basis. Like, how could I have made that situation better? Or like, how could I improve upon that next time? I feel like just doing that over time raises your self-awareness. And I think we need to do more of that.
I agree. And having feedback loops, like, I think that's where it comes to, where I hear, and I'll agree sometimes, positions in people in positions of leadership will say it gets very, very lonely. It becomes very challenging. And I'll agree, there are certain periods of time where, the decision-making process and some of the things that go along with developing a company are lonely. But if you don't put yourself in a position where you have feedback loops, you're making time for conversation with people on your team, you really, really, really have a pulse of what's going on with others and with yourself as a result of those conversations, that you're not getting enough information. So for somebody who may be sitting there kind of going like, well, I don't know what my weaknesses are. I don't know where I need to focus on, or I don't know where I need to be better. I'd almost argue that you're not having enough conversations with people on your team. And that is central. I mean, your internal communication amongst your team is a driving source of innovation and change. And the more that you're asking people, hey, how could this be easier? Hey, how could this be better? Hey, how could we end up getting this result more often? Or, hey, how can we make sure that you don't end up in this particular situation or delivering this kind of outcome again? The more that people start to have these productive conversations where there's group thought and you're getting multiple perspectives on a way to ensure that whatever outcome it is that you're striving for does become something that happens with regularity. And that is too. I mean, we talk about a lot about diversity for a lot of productive reasons, and diversity of thought is one of the most critical things that I think we need to continue to focus on, because when you put too many people in the room that operate similarly or view things similarly, that's rarely good. When you have different personality types, you have different ways to approach things, you have different ways of coming to solutions. I think that you largely end up with something that is much more effective for the masses, and much more adaptable and agile to get to whatever it is that target outcome is.
When things get, like you said, blindsided, you don't like getting blindsided, surprised. Like, if those situations come up, how do you make sure that you're taking care of yourself and not making sure, allowing yourself to recharge?
That a lot of it, fortunately, comes. My wife helps me out with that. I have a very supportive family that helps me out with that. I think that I also have gotten so much more in tune with what I need over the years. Full transparency moment. God, man, my younger years, it was like work. and play way too hard on the weekends. Like that was like, I was like a textbook, work hard, play hard, very, very cliche. Sunday scaries. Like Monday, I was like half effective. It just was not a great way. And I had moments where I'd be like just absolutely burnt out. Whereas now it's like, I've got a much better idea of how to kind of block time, how to sprint, how to walk, appreciate the marathon, know that, hey, when I have a sprint coming up, that I need to do certain things to get back to baseline, blocking trips on my schedule, blocking family time on my schedule. I've gotten so much better about, quite honestly, just saying no, which I think is highly, highly, highly underrated and undervalued, especially for anybody that wants to talk about the B word with burnout and putting yourself in a situation where you're constantly kind of at the beck and call of others. But yeah, I think once again, I mean, your people, your routine, making sure that you know what you value and recognizing during moments where something does make you feel good, or putting yourself in a position where you're actually able to get into some deep thought. What works for you from a routine standpoint? Like I am so much better if I wake up every day and I have some slow moments before I go to the gym, and then ideally some slow moments again when I come home, make breakfast. And yeah, am I doing stuff? Yeah, I'm doing stuff, whether it's email or phone calls or this, that, and the other. But your routine and just trial and error is something that I think is important. But yeah, it's nothing other than honestly a little bit of self-experimentation, doing some pattern recognition in terms of recognizing when things are working for you or not working for you, and putting yourself in a situation where, once again, too, you're talking to other high achievers. What works for you? Hey, what have you tried? Hey, what have you had challenges with? Find other people that have been where you've been, or at relatively the same spot. And I think you're more likely to find a lot of similarities and learn some things that will immediately be applicable to what you have going on.
And I think it comes back to that self-awareness piece that we were talking about a little earlier. Like if you don't know what works well for you or what detracts from your energy, then you're just going to be stuck in the same spot for a long, long time until you start to ask yourself those different questions about what you need to be a highly functioning individual.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's something that I don't think we probably talk about enough. I mean, I even posted something out the other day, man. We just don't focus on getting mental reps in, or like approaching like mental challenge the same way we focus on physical challenge. All right, you want to improve yourself physically? Go run or work out or lift or whatever, right? But how do you get better mentally? I learn. Okay, well, you can learn like clinical like knowledge. You can learn stuff that you can apply on a on a clinical level or whatever it is in terms of knowledge as it relates to a particular topic. But how do you develop more capacity? How do you develop more resilience? How do you develop more situational flexibility? How do you develop your soft skills in the way that you're looking to develop your body from a resilience to stressor standpoint, right? When I lift and when I work out, I become more resilient to physical stress, right? Regardless of whatever that physical stress may be, I can handle stressors on a day-to-day basis more. I train so I can go into a sport and handle the stressors of that sport more. How do I handle moments where I'm anxious more? How do I handle moments where I'm down more? How do I handle moments where things quite aren't going the way that I want them to, and I don't quite know how to approach them? Those are your mental gym reps. And I think the more that we have a framework surrounding whether or not it's journaling or some kind of like light reading. I was a big daily Stoic fan, and I was pairing that with 5-minute journal. And I was really trying to kind of break some habits of myself, my own personally, where I felt like I was just work hard, play hard, running on this treadmill nonstop in all facets of my life, where I feel like I wasn't really making time to just think, okay, let's wake up in the morning. Let's pop a journal out. How am I feeling? how did I feel about yesterday? What am I thinking about today? What would make today a great day? What are some things that I need to do to make sure that today is a great day? And then you pop in at the end of the night. How did the day go? What were some wins from the day? What can I take away that's positive? How can I make sure that moving forward that I continue to ensure that whatever that maybe was negative today doesn't become a recurring thing? And I think the more that you are making small bouts of time, or you're reflective, you're asking yourself some of these questions, you're making sure that your January looks different than your February, and that your 2022 looks different than your 2021. We when we want to make sure that we're making improvements, I think of that logbook, and I know that Key, you can relate, right? All the workout stuff that you've been putting out, you've been trying to create habits there. It's like, how do I have this logbook of sets and reps that also can be somewhat parallel to what I'm trying to accomplish from a mental sweat standpoint?
Yeah, definitely. When it comes to like morning routines, would you say that you kind of always, like when you tried having a morning routine, was that something that worked for you right away, or you kind of went through like doing things in a different order until you found what works for you best?
I needed that structure early on to really, really help me out. So the 5-minute journal is something that, you could pop on. It's, once again, very, very short period of time, but I think it gets you habitually thinking about certain things that are beneficial. When I think of kind of and I'm going to draw kind of a crazy topic to kind of pull in here, but it's like intrusive thoughts, right? We're intrusive thoughts where we're sitting here and stuff's kind of coming in, and sometimes it's a little bit concerning, but sometimes it's kind of like, well, why does that thought keep popping up in my head? And then what can I potentially do to habitually get me thinking about things a certain way, instead of allowing things to solely just kind of like seep in and see what comes into my head at a given moment? How can I create some space where I'm solely thinking about, okay, yesterday, what was good about yesterday? What was not good about yesterday? Why was this not good about yesterday? What can I do to make sure that today doesn't end up like yesterday? Okay, what would make today a great day? So then you start to kind of reframe and kind of provide some guardrails to these thoughts that might otherwise kind of creep into your head without very, very little structure to them. So, the 5-minute journal, I think, really, really helped me kind of structure my days a little bit more and focus on those wins, or making sure that if I didn't maybe have a win in a certain area yesterday, that I could have a win in that particular area moving forward. And I think at this point, when whether or not I'm making breakfast, or whether or not I'm just kind of like waking up in the morning before I hit the gym, coffee, I'm kind of doing whatever it is on my computer, that I am thinking about things in a certain way to prepare myself mentally to be successful in a given day. What am I doing to think about what I'm in control of for that day? What am I doing to make sure that whatever I need to get done that day is on my calendar? How am I blocking time, not just for work, which I did probably too good of a job of early on, but also blocking time for self, knowing that I'm also at my best for our team when I'm at my best for myself. There's moments where, thankfully, I have people, in our organization now, who will come up to me and go, "Hey, you've been going too long. You need to make some time for yourself. I see you've been sprinting, but I if anything, I'm always going to err on the side of kind of redlining myself a little bit still. But I've gotten so much better at recognizing that as a result of some of the structure that I put in place, as a result of some of the transparent conversations that I've had with team. I think we went back and forth a little bit. Like when I know that I'm going to sprint, I tell people around me and I go, "Hey, just check on me. I just need you to check on me. Like I'm going to go sprint, and I know I can sprint because I have done it before, but I do know that it takes a lot out of me." And when you have those conversations with people and then they check in on you and they make time, and maybe you're grabbing coffee or you're grabbing some conversations on drives and stuff like that, that it does keep you grounded, especially knowing that, you don't have to go through those sprints in life by yourself.
Yeah, definitely having the support system really helps. I just want to pivot a little bit and talk about like changes in the PT profession, because R2P is very innovative and like kind of setting the tone for like future clinics. But what would you say needs to change in the PT, or you would like to see change, and what do you expect the future to be in like 5-10 years of the profession?
I think the big thing that, man, do I want to go? Here's what I'll say. I think largely the way that healthcare is presented to people has to be presented in a way that is not viewed grudgingly. Healthcare cannot be a grudge purchase, and it needs to be something that has long-lasting effects with people as a result of touching it, as opposed to something that is more transactional. I do not want people to think that I'm absolutely 100% negative on anything pharmaceutical related. But for example, when you enter healthcare and you have a prescription that has been provided for you, that is for your benefit, but I would argue that it's largely transactional. What else are we doing from a habit standpoint? What else are we doing from an educational standpoint? What else has been provided to that individual besides a prescription that addresses complaints at a given moment that potentially then has to become something that they do all the time? Instead of viewing that moment where they're interacting with the healthcare system, where I have a prescription, I receive pills or whatever, but I also am accompanied by a more holistic approach that helps that moment in time where I've interacted with healthcare as being more transformational. So with PT, how do we make sure that an injury in itself becomes a whole lot more than just that individual coming in, checking boxes, doing exercises, and leaving? Where there is this educational framework where people are empowered to operate differently as a result of the information that they've been exposed to, the things that they've done while being in a certain facility or a certain environment with other professionals. And can there be more of this holistic and big picture opportunity provided to them, so that as a result of interacting with healthcare, that population health is improving? And I think that's the more that we focus on population health, the entry point that individual has into our industry or silo of healthcare, and the more that we're thinking big picture, I think the better off that we can be. So for us, we've gotten a lot more into educational resources, whether or not it's the Injury Finder online or niche specific and topic specific content that is on either YouTube or a website. I think the more that we get into online courses, ebooks, all of this different multimodal information delivery, the more that we can benefit people, where they might have interacted us originally just for PT, but they're leaving armed with so much more. I say it more and more and more, but we provide infrastructure as a company to gain audience, to then innovate on the deliverables in which that audience receives from us. So the more that we are able to provide infrastructure through the growth of locations, the audience will continue to grow, both people that will receive the service and maybe even not receive the service, but interact with the brand. And then we'll continue to innovate what we can provide people with deliverables there. I think the more that will be very, very impactful, at least where we are here in the DMV.
I definitely like that idea. I was just curious with like what you said about trying to make things transformative for the patient or the client. As with at R2P, do you guys offer anything outside of like the sessions? So I feel like I'm a big believer of everything, all the changes that you're going to experience, all the progress that you have is going to mainly happen outside of the sessions, like with your habits and things you learn. So how do you keep your clients like accountable or make sure they're making progress outside of the session? Do you guys have like systems for that?
Are you talking about just in terms of like home program stuff? Or are you talking about post-graduation or kind of a mix of both? Or I mean, there's R2P plus programs that people can go into after they're done. We do kind of pride ourselves on at least what it seems like a high level of home program. We can't use the word compliance now. It's adherence to home programs. So yeah, I mean, I think those are probably the biggest areas. I think there's more areas for opportunity that as we have people in our team start to get a little bit more into the online space, they're creating a little bit more niche or sports specific content. Greg's been diving into running stuff more. We've got some rotational athlete content coming. We have a group of lifters who are creating a little bit more niche specific content. So that I think the more that we can use that entry point as an opportunity to provide people with educational resources that does keep them connected to the brand post graduation. I think that we're going to be doing a better and better job of that. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but
yeah, that answers the question. I was just curious because I see like you guys do a lot of things. I'm on your email list, so I see like the niche specific things. I was just curious about like from a patient aspect.
Yeah, no, patients. I mean, ideally, while they're with us, we're continuing to change home program in terms of whatever it is that they're working on. They're getting taken on an educational journey while they're spending time with us there. We're ideally putting them in a situation where they're more in tune with their body throughout the course of the process. And when graduation day comes, ideally, it's not just a matter of they're physically able to do things more, but they have kind of gone through that educational journey, whether or not it's the email drip campaign that follows them, whether or not it's they get the newsletter that goes out once a week, whether or not it's some of the stuff that gets posted on social media, or ideally as well, the conversations that they're having with their respective practitioners. So it does kind of come into that multimodal, delivery of information where, okay, they came in for their back, but maybe there was a stretch of the day that they saw in the newsletter. Or, hey, maybe there was something that they saw that tied them into a certain partner organization that we work with that they saw through Instagram. You know, the various different ways that people will interact with a brand. It does become very, very important that you have media content, media creation. You know, we have our own media team now that we've had for about 7 months. You know, they are in the offices. They are meeting with our team. They are spending time, whether or not it's niche specific content or just doing behind the scenes, but ideally portraying the brand and the profession and in the way that we want it to. They are at the events on the weekends. They do go out and support our partner organizations. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they're at Girls on the Run today. They were at a running event a couple weeks ago. They'll be at a CrossFit event that we have coming up. I think they were at the Women's Leadership Conference most recently this past Tuesday. So, you know, the more that they can get in behind the scenes and also tell stories of people that have gone through certain things at the office, I think that also helps provide people that maybe haven't viewed PT in a certain light to see things a little bit differently, and ideally, you know, change the statistics associated with the profession, which are largely not tremendous when you talk about the amount of people that actually choose conservative approach, which is PT, to support them with their musculoskeletal problems.
Yeah, I think all that is great, especially to raise the awareness of our profession. I think if we can do that, we can be seen as like the main providers, the same way medical doctors are. So I think R2P is doing a great job of that, and just want to shout out you for that.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I think the storytelling side's huge. I mean, I think when you get into marketing and sales, it's like, okay, who are you? What do you do? But in all reality, like the storytelling side gets to how are we actually solving people's problems? When X, Y, and Z happens, like what is it that person can do, and how does that help them? You know, they want to hear more of that journey. They want to hear more from patients. They want to hear more of these testimonials. And I think we can all agree, like, you know, stuff like Google reviews are great when you're reading things on text, but the more that you can capture people in a manner in which can be translated to YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, whatever, where most people are consuming information, the more we can be a part of that changing tide from a healthcare and ideally a profession standpoint.
Yeah, and I think you also get to see who you're going to be working with or what kind of people you're going to be working with. If you're a new person coming into the R2P world, you get to see what Josh is like, or Zach is like, or any of the other, or Eric, or any of the other therapists. You get to see what they're about, how they interact with their people, how they interact in general, and it helps with that trust, with that buy-in before you even meet them for the first time.
Yes, you humanize the people that you're working with on a regular basis. Where if I think about just traditional medical, you walk in, somebody's really, really late, you get walked back to a room, somebody takes your blood pressure, you sit, you wait, somebody comes in, they talk to you for under 5 minutes. It's relatively straight and to the point. I'm not saying this is all environments. I'm just saying it's a lot, but that's largely it. That's it. So how do you put yourself in a situation where you're making it more friendly, you're making it more engaging, you're making it more like there's this genuine like investment in the relationship between the healthcare professional and the people that are interacting there? I just, you get the warm and fuzzies, when people walk in, I want them to get the warm and fuzzies about their experience. I want them to leave and go, somebody the other day, I was at the office, they were like, this is the first place that I really genuinely felt listened to. Like that should be the norm, So I think the more that we're able to kind of get behind the scenes a little bit, that we're able to make people see how things can be done. Hopefully we continue to be kind of an example of things to change for younger people to come out and to have their own businesses and to look at some of these practices and go, you know what, things can be done significantly differently, be successful. And we can work towards a better version of what we've all of the things that we all have taken note of and admittedly complained about. Like what can we actually do besides complain? Well, here is an example of that. And then hopefully there's other people that can come and continue to innovate and change and do stuff. And we all look back on healthcare in 30, 40, 50 years, and it's in a significantly different place.
That's cool. Even though we're all millennials, but I think we're making moves, and
Yes.
I think that's why wait when we can start the change now.
It's so wild hearing people complain about millennials. I don't know. That's just why. Yeah, I was in some conversations over the past couple of days, and I'm just like sitting here, kind of going, man, like, yeah, I don't know how you would survive. Like, we do not have a single clinician that is not a millennial. First and foremost, every single clinician is 25 to 40. Mm-hmm. So that right out of the gates, and then we have a couple people from a clerical or administrative standpoint that are older, but I don't know. I'm biased, but we got a pretty good thing going with regards to how we operate, and it's pretty enjoyable. It's fun. We've got very, very low low attrition, very high retention. And some of the problems that other people have, I kind of sit there and I go, I almost want to go be a fly on the wall at your place and see how things are done, but I'm going to guarantee that it's very, very different.
Absolutely. And you've kind of led the way in that charge. So just wanted to give you your props on the pod.
I appreciate it. We got good people though, man. I sit here, I get to have these conversations, but man, there's a lot of people that come in and add their 2 cents. More people come in and add their 2 cents. We're a pretty rich team.
Absolutely. What would you say to close out here? What would you say if you could give away 2 to 3 takeaways from this conversation today? What do you want people to go away with?
I think that there's a way to challenge the status quo or to look at the status quo and want to do stuff differently, but you have to figure out productive ways to do that. And there's a way to change the game. And the first thing you have to figure out is first and foremost, how to actually play the game. And then when you start playing the game, you can start to seek inspiration from other people that are either in the same sport as you, let's call ours healthcare, or in other sports. And I think largely when I have tried to look for inspiration, it has been outside of healthcare. I think that it's no secret that healthcare is largely lacking with regards to innovation, business practices, workplace. And I think that we look at the tech space, we can look at even the fitness industry, we can look at other companies that are doing stuff, whether or not it's in Forbes magazine or Inc. magazine or some of these other places where you do have companies be highly successful, go through a lot of growth. I think you're going to find some of the things that it is that you're looking for. So play the game, learn the game, start to find ways to ideally draw inspiration from people outside of the particular game that you're on, but try not to be somebody that's sitting there and that complains about the status quo and doesn't look for solutions. And that just goes to one of our operating principles where it's solutions first, solutions first, solutions first. And for us, it's not just come with solutions, but go ahead and start working on the solution so that when you come to everybody else, it's closer and closer to the finish line. But I think that's probably the biggest thing. And outside of that, if you're a young professional and you're looking to really do some amazing and impactful things with your career, the more transparent and intentional you are with conversations early in your arrangement with an employer, being a part of team or whatever, the more likely it is to get what you want out of being in that particular environment. I can tell you that the people that have come into R2P been very, very aware, then transparent and intentional about where they want to see their career go. It is happening, right? And that is the whole point. And you should come to expect that out of companies more and more and more and more. Companies in the future, much like you've looked at how free agency and leagues have gotten more and more player centric and player focused, it's not going to be that much different in the corporate world. So I think the more that we have those conversations, the better it off that all parties are going to be, and we're going to work towards the version of capitalism, the version of healthcare that is one that is more conscious and employee centered.
Yeah, definitely. I love all of that. Josh, thank you for coming on the podcast. Can you let us know like where we can find you on Instagram, Twitter, all social media?
Yes, at Dr. Josh Funk on TikTok now, Instagram, and Twitter. And then you can check out Rehab to Perform as well on TikTok and Instagram. The Rehab to Perform website is rehab2perform.com, rehab2perform.com.
Okay, thank you. Man, you have anything else to say to Josh?
No, thanks for taking the time to have this conversation with us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. And if you all need anything, let me know.
All right, we'll catch you guys on the next episode of the KMA Audio Experience. Peace.